Millionaire orders a cake for his mother, and on meeting the pastry chef falls completely in love with her. Please give us a like and subscribe to support our channel. The scent of vanilla and burnt sugar danced in the air as Emily stirred the wooden spoon through thick batter, the clink of metal against the stainless steel bowl filling the quiet of the small bakery. Sweet Haven Bakery wasn't just a business. It was the last thread tying her to a home. The exposed brick walls, faded yellow with time, held echoes of a life slipping through her fingers. Growing up in Savannah, Georgia, under the care of her grandmother Ruth, who taught her to knead bread and believed that a cake baked with love could mend even the most broken hearts, had been her sanctuary. But now at 28, Emily was alone, clinging to a dream crumbling like poorly risen dough. Her parents had died when she was just 7, taken by a car crash on I-95 during a rainy spring night. Ruth took her in without a second thought, turning pain into something sweet, literally. "Every recipe has a story, darling," her grandmother would say, and Emily grew up believing it, surrounded by flour clouds and the warmth of the oven. But Ruth had been gone for 6 months, stolen by a cancer that moved too fast, taking with her the light that kept the bakery alive. Now bills piled up on the chipped wooden counter, suppliers hounded her for overdue payments, and the bank sent cold letters threatening to seize the building. Sleepless nights, eyes red from crying, and no way out in sight. That's how Emily lived now. That April morning, the bell above the door jingled, pulling her from her dark thoughts. She wiped her hands on her stained apron and looked up, expecting a familiar neighborhood face. Maybe Mrs. Jenkins, loyal to her cinnamon cookies, or old Tom with his black coffee and muffin. But the man who stepped in didn't belong to this quiet corner of Savannah. Tall, wrapped in a grey overcoat that screamed wealth, he carried a rigid stance, as if the world bent to him. His eyes, a piercing blue, scanned the room before landing on her. Emily felt a shiver, but forced a smile. "Good morning. Welcome to Sweet Haven." "What can I do for you?" Her voice came out steadier than the knot in her stomach suggested. He hesitated, lips parting as if searching for words. "I need a cake. Something special. For my mum. It's her birthday tomorrow." His deep voice carried a faint accent, maybe New York or Boston, but there was an unexpected softness to it. As he spoke, his gaze locked on hers, and something shifted. James felt a warmth bloom in his chest, a pang he couldn't explain, as if her eyes had caught him off guard. Emily grabbed the order notebook, trying to ignore how he watched her. "Sure, any ideas? We've got peach cakes with cream, real popular around here, or something classic like chocolate ganache. I can customize it too." He frowned, thoughtful, then gave a small smile, one corner of his mouth lifting. "Peach sounds good. Do it however you think best. It just needs to be perfect." The word perfect carried a weight that made her pause, but before she could reply, he tilted his head. "You work here alone?" The question caught her off guard and she lowered the pen, meeting his gaze. "Most of the time, it's my place. My grandma left it to me." The words spilled out with more feeling than she intended, and she bit her lip, hesitating. But something in his look, curious, almost tender, urged her on. "She raised me here between these walls, taught me everything I know. Every recipe here is hers in some way." James nodded slowly, his eyes drifting over the crooked shelves and the chalkboard with the day's special. "So it's more than a bakery. It's a legacy." His voice was low, almost reverent, and for a moment, the air between them lightened, warmed. "My mom loves to cook too. I think she'd like a place like this." Emily smiled, a real smile this time, feeling something loosen inside her. "Then I'll make it extra special, so she can taste the love we put in here." They shared a long look, a quiet connection sparking, like they'd stumbled into a secret neither fully grasped. Her heart beat faster, and she saw a glint in his eyes that said he felt it too. "Name for the order?" she asked, returning to the notebook, her hands shaky now. James Carter." He tucked his hands into his pockets, but didn't look away, and for a fleeting moment his eyes softened further, as if gazing at her erased some shadow he carried. "All right, James. See you tomorrow, then." She jotted down the name, warmth creeping up her neck. There was an electricity in the air, unnamed but lingering like the sweet scent around them. He nodded, lingering before turning to leave, as if he wanted to say more. The bell chimed as he stepped out, and Emily stood there, spoon in hand, her heart racing for no clear reason. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was how he'd listened, like he truly saw her. The day blurred by with batter ovens and scattered customers. As the sun dipped, painting Georgia's sky orange and pink, Emily locked the front door and climbed to the tiny apartment above the bakery. Sitting on the bed, surrounded by bills, she tried to focus on James Carter's cake. It had to be perfect, he'd said, and she needed the money. Every penny was a fight now. But then, sorting through envelopes, one slipped to the floor. Unlike the others, it bore the logo of a bank she dreaded. With trembling hands, she opened it. The words hit like a blade. Eviction notice, 30-day deadline, property sold to Carter Enterprises. The world collapsed. Carter Enterprises, James Carter, the man with the cake, the man she'd just felt something so pure with. Emily let the paper fall, her heart sinking. He wasn't just a customer. He was the reason she was about to lose everything. The paper shook in her hands as she reread it, as if staring could rewrite the truth. Carter Enterprises. James's name rang in her mind like a mournful bell, each toll heavier than the last. The bakery, the last piece of Ruth she had, was slipping away because of him. The man who'd ordered a cake so casually was uprooting her world. She tossed the paper down and buried her face in her hands, silent sobs racking her chest. Outside, crickets sang into Savannah's humid night, but in that cramped room, the silence choked her. Next morning, she descended the stairs, heart in her throat. The peach cake was ready, perfect layers of cream and fruit, its aroma filling the shop. She'd adorned it with sugar flowers, each petal hand-shaped, just as Ruth taught her. But now, staring at it, all she tasted was bitterness. It was for him, the man destroying everything. The bell jingled, and there he was, James Carter, pristine in his grey overcoat, brown hair swept back, blue eyes gleaming as if nothing could touch him. "Morning," he said, his tone calm, almost kind. "Is the cake ready?" Emily swallowed hard, fists clenched behind the counter. "It is. Here." She shoved the white box with its gold ribbon toward him, avoiding his gaze. The sting of betrayal burned, but she wasn't ready to face him. Not yet. James took the box, pausing as if sensing the tension. "How much do I owe you?" $25, she snapped. He pulled a 50 from his pocket and laid it on the counter. "Keep the change." He offered a faint smile, but Emily didn't return it. Something in her stare made him frown. "Everything okay?" That broke her. Blood rushed to her head and she erupted. "No, it's not okay. Do you know what Carter Enterprises is doing to me? To this place?" She gestured at the walls, the crooked shelves, the ancient oven still working by some miracle. "You bought the building. I've got 30 days to get out, and you waltz in here for a cake like nothing's wrong." His face shifted. The smile vanished, replaced by shock and maybe guilt. I didn't know it was you. I mean this place." "Didn't know?" She laughed, a hollow, pained sound. "You're a Carter. That's what you do, right? Buy everything, tear it down, move on without a glance back. Get out. Take your cake and go." He opened his mouth, but no words came. They locked eyes for a long moment, the air crackling between them. Then James grabbed the box and left without another word, the bell ringing like a goodbye. Emily sank onto the stool behind the counter, legs shaky. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. All she could see was Ruth's smile as she dusted cinnamon over dough. Sweet Haven wasn't just a bakery. It was proof love could weather storms. And now, it was slipping away. Across town, James drove his black SUV through Savannah's tree-lined streets, the cake on the passenger seat a quiet reminder of what had happened. He wasn't easily shaken. Years running Carter Enterprises had hardened him into a man of cold decisions. But Emily's look, that mix of fury and despair, struck a chord he didn't know he still had. He parked outside his mother's grand mansion on the city's edge and sat there, staring at the cake. It was perfect, just as he'd asked. But now, it felt wrong. Inside the company, James was just another Carter, following his father's legacy, a man who'd built a real estate empire by crushing smaller dreams. He'd never questioned it, until now, when he handed the cake to his mother, an elegant woman with grey hair who beamed at the peach scent. He barely managed to smile back. "Where'd you find this, Jimmy?" she asked, using the childhood nickname he hated. "Somewhere special," he mumbled, but his mind was miles away back at Emily's bakery. That night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the Savannah River, James opened his laptop and pulled up the building project files. It was a straightforward plan. Demolish the block, build a modern commercial complex, rake in millions. He saw Sweet Haven's address on the list and felt his stomach twist. He slammed the laptop shut and ran his hands over his face. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, Emily locked up the bakery, the day's weight crushing her shoulders. She climbed to her apartment and collapsed on the bed, the eviction notice still on the floor, glaring at her like an enemy. Then the phone rang. It was the bank. "Ms. Dawson, we have an update on the property," the voice said. "Carter Enterprises reached out. They're reconsidering the sale. They want to negotiate." Emily froze, heart pounding. Negotiate? What was James up to now? Was it hope or just another blow disguised as salvation? The phone slipped from her hands, landing on the mattress with a soft thud. The banker's voice lingered in her mind, cool and professional, yet hinting at a promise she wasn't sure she could trust. Negotiate. The word spun like a coin tossed in the air, and she couldn't tell which side it'd land on, hope or another trap. Sitting on the bed, the eviction notice inches from her bare feet, her chest tightened. Was James Carter rethinking the sale? After everything, did he think a bank call could fix what he'd broken? Anger flared, hot and fierce, but beneath it lurked something riskier, a flicker of curiosity. Next morning, Savannah's sky hung heavy with grey clouds, the humid air promising rain. Emily opened Sweet Haven on autopilot, flipping on lights, firing up the oven, mixing batter for the blueberry muffins customers loved. But her mind was elsewhere. Every chime of the bell made her glance up, half expecting, half dreading James's return. He didn't show. The day dragged on, slow with few patrons, the silence mocking her. By 5, she locked up and stood there, staring at the bakery's sign, its crooked letters hand-painted by Ruth years ago. "What would you do, Grandma?" she whispered, voice cracking. Across town, James waged an internal war. In the Carter Enterprises boardroom, a polished mahogany table separated him from a half-dozen suited executives. He listened to the project report, fists clenched under the table. "The block'll turn a profit in under 2 years," one man said, pointing to colourful charts on a screen. "Demolition's the best move. Tenants are already notified." James's stomach churned at the thought of Emily, her glare when she'd thrown him out. He raised a hand, cutting the speaker off. "I want to rethink this plan," he said, voice steady but with a tremor only he felt. The others exchanged surprised looks. "The building on Abercorn Street, the bakery. Pull it from the project." The silence that followed was sharp. The CFO, a middle-aged man with thin-framed glasses, leaned forward. "James, that doesn't make sense. The profit—" "I know about profit," he snapped, sharper now. "But not everything's about money." The words slipped out before he could stop them, and for a split second he saw his father's face, a man who'd never have said that. The board muttered, but James slammed the table, ending it. "Call the bank. Tell them we're open to negotiate with the tenants, at least with her." He stormed out, heart racing. In the hall he leaned against the glass wall overlooking downtown Savannah, the river slicing through the city like a living vein. For the first time in years, he felt something beyond the burden of expectations. Guilt, yes, but also a longing he couldn't name, a yearning to be more than his last name. Days later, Emily got another call. "Ms. Dawson, Carter Enterprises wants a meeting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at your address." She nearly dropped the phone again, shock mingling with lingering anger. A meeting? For what? To flaunt his power to save or ruin her. Yet a stubborn part of her wanted to hear him out. When the day came, Emily stood behind the counter, apron tied tight like armor. James walked in, no overcoat this time, just a blue dress shirt that made his eyes pop. He carried a black folder, But there was no arrogance in his stance, only a caution she hadn't expected. "Emily," he started, stopping a few steps from the counter, "I know you hate me. You've got every right. But I don't want to take this from you." He gestured at the space, the shelves with homemade jam jars, the chalkboard special. "I changed the plan. The building won't be torn down. Not by me." She crossed her arms, heart pounding so loud she feared he'd hear. "Why should I believe you? You've lied before." "I didn't lie," he said, voice low, almost pleading. "I just didn't know it was you. But now I do. And I don't want to be the guy who ends this." He opened the folder, sliding a document across the counter. "It's a proposal. Carter Enterprises backs off the purchase if you can cover half the property value. The bank will finance the rest. Sweet Haven stays yours." Emily took the paper, fingers shaking. It was real. Numbers, signatures, a path to save it all. But the price was steep, more than she'd saved even after years of pinching pennies. She looked up, torn between gratitude and suspicion. "Why are you doing this?" James faltered, eyes locked on hers. "Because I saw what this place means to you. And because I don't want to be like my dad." Raw pain laced his words, something he hadn't meant to let slip. For a moment they stood silent, the air thick with something new. Not just anger, but a spark of understanding. Emily dropped her gaze to the document, the decision's weight crushing her. It was a chance, not a sure thing. She needed time, and money she didn't have. "I'll think about it," she said at last, voice firm despite the chaos inside. "But this doesn't erase what you did." "I know," he replied, nodding. "I don't expect it to." He stepped back, giving her space, and left, the bell echoing after him. That night, as Emily swept the bakery floor, the phone rang again. A different voice, a woman's. "Ms. Dawson, this is the Savannah Historical Society. We heard about your situation. We want to help. We might have a proposal for you." Her heart leapt. Another chance, or just another fragile thread of hope about to snap. The broom slipped from her hands, clattering on the wooden floor with a thud that reverberated through the empty bakery. The woman's voice lingered in her ears, gentle yet firm, like a lifeline tossed to a drowning soul. "We might have a proposal for you." She stood frozen, heart hammering against her ribs, as hope, that fragile thing she'd nearly forgotten how to feel, crept through the cracks of her weary spirit. The Savannah Historical Society wanted to help. Why? How? She barely managed a "thank you, call me tomorrow," before hanging up, legs giving out, until she sat on the floor, back against the counter. Night fell over Savannah like a thick blanket, the distant wail of a street trumpet blending with cricket songs. Emily sat there staring at the peeling ceiling, James's document still on the counter like a silent dare. Half the property value. It was a lot, but maybe with this new offer she could find a way. For the first time in weeks she slept without tears, dreams filled with Ruth laughing as she sprinkled sugar over a warm cake. The next day, the Historical Society meeting took place at a quaint cafe on Broughton Street, blocks from Sweet Haven. The rep, a grey-haired woman named Margaret with kind eyes and a vibe reminiscent of Ruth, spoke warmly. "We know what your bakery means," she said, cradling a teacup. "It's part of Savannah's history, a living piece of the past. We want to name it a historical landmark. That comes with a preservation fund, money to keep it standing." Emily blinked, processing. "How much money?" Her voice rasped with emotion. "Not enough to buy it outright," Margaret admitted, "but maybe enough to add to what you've got. And landmark status could push the bank to ease terms." It was a lifeline, not a full fix, but it brought tears to Emily's eyes. She thanked her, promised to consider it, and left the cafe with a lighter heart than she'd had in months. But the lightness faded fast. Back at the bakery, she found James by the window, gazing at the vanilla cupcakes on display. He turned as she approached, his look intense, almost vulnerable, stopping her mid-step. "I'm not here to fight," he said, hands raised in surrender. "Just wanted to see how you're holding up." "Holding up?" She laughed, bitter. "Trying not to lose everything, James." "You? How's it feel playing the hero who changes his mind?" He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. "I'm no hero, but I want to help, for real." He stepped closer, tentative. "I know business. I can help you sort the finances, find a way to make this work. No strings. She crossed her arms, pride clashing with need. Why? Why do you care? James looked down, as if searching for words in the floor. Because I see you fighting for something you love. And I don't know what that's like. Not really. There was a confession there, one he didn't need to voice, but she felt it in his tone. Against every instinct, she nodded. Fine. My terms. And I don't forgive you. Not yet. He agreed with a nod, and over the next days, he showed up with spreadsheets, ideas, and a patience she hadn't expected. He pored over ledgers while she baked, suggesting smart cuts and ways to draw crowds. Slowly, Sweet Haven breathed again. More orders, more smiling faces, more life. One hot afternoon, decorating a cake together for a special order, his fingers brushed hers, passing the piping bag. The touch was brief but electric, freezing them both, the air shifting. Emily yanked her hand back, face flushing, and James cleared his throat, resuming work as if nothing happened. But something had, something she refused to name. Weeks passed and the bakery bloomed. The team, 2 teenage weekend helpers Emily hired, adored James, giggling at his New York stories from before he inherited his father's empire. He won everyone over, but with Emily, it was different. She kept a distance, a wall she wasn't ready to topple. Until Margaret called again. We got the fund, the woman said, voice buzzing with excitement. And with landmark status, the bank cut the price. Combine it with what you've got, and you can buy the building. Emily nearly dropped the phone, tears flowing too fast to speak. It was real. Sweet Haven could be hers, forever. She raced to tell James, finding him in the back, reviewing supplier orders. We did it, she shouted, throwing her arms around him without thinking. He hugged her back, strong and warm, and for a second the world stilled. When they parted, his eyes shone with something beyond pride. You did it, he corrected, smiling. I just helped. That night, exhausted but elated, Emily locked up and climbed to her apartment. Sitting on the bed, she gazed at the ceiling and whispered a silent thank you to Ruth. Everything seemed perfect until the phone rang again. It was the bank. Ms. Dawson, there's an issue. Carter Enterprises added a condition. They want a stake in the property. James didn't mention this. The floor vanished beneath her. Had he tricked her again, or was there more she didn't understand? The phone fell from her hands like it burned, plastic clattering against the wooden floor too loudly in the apartment's silence. A stake in the property. The banker's words swirled in her head, each one a jab reopening the wound of distrust. She stood, trembling, and walked to the window, staring at Savannah's dark streets. Streetlights glinted off puddles from the afternoon rain, but all she saw was James, his soft smile, his seemingly honest eyes, his warm touch. Was it all a lie? Her breath caught, and she gripped the sill, fighting tears already spilling. How could he? After weeks side by side, after she'd let him into Sweet Haven and worse, her heart, did he still have a hidden agenda? She stumbled back to the bed, grabbing the phone, fingers hovering over his number. She wanted to call, scream, demand answers. But what would she say? That she felt betrayed again? That she'd briefly believed he was different? Instead, she hurled the phone at the wall, the crack echoing like a cry she couldn't release. Morning came clear, but a storm brewed inside the bakery. Emily baked in silence, her movements sharp as she pounded dough, cinnamon scent filling the air. When James walked in, the bell chiming like a warning, she didn't look up. He stopped at the counter, 2 to-go coffees in hand, his face bright with a smile that died when he saw hers. Emily? What's wrong? His voice was wary, sensing the shift. She dropped the spoon into the bowl and faced him, eyes blazing. You tell me, James. The bank called last night, said Carter Enterprises wants a stake in the property. Is that true? Each word cut through the air. His face paled, coffee nearly slipping from his grip. Yes, it's true. But it's not what you think. Not what I think. She rounded the counter, stopping inches from him, shaking with rage. You used me, again. Made me believe you cared, and all along you were planning to take a piece of this. She jabbed a finger at the walls, the shelves, the oven holding Ruth's warmth. No! James dropped the cups on the counter, liquid splashing, and stepped toward her, eyes desperate. "I didn't plan it. It was the board's idea. They pushed it, said the company needed a return, even a small one. I said no, but they moved anyway. I was going to tell you today, I swear." "Swear?" Her laugh was sharp, empty. "You expect me to buy that? After everything? Get out, James. I'm done with your promises." He stood there, shoulders slumped, face a mix of guilt and anguish. "Emily, please, let me explain." "Out!" she yelled, voice breaking, pointing at the door. He hesitated, eyes glistening like tears might fall, but he obeyed, leaving silently. The bell rang like an end. Alone, Emily slumped against the counter, sobs crashing over her uncontrollably. Everything she'd built with him, trust, stolen moments, the sense she wasn't so alone, crumbled like a botched cake. But through the tears, resolve sparked. She didn't need him. She'd buy the building herself, no matter the cost. Days later, Margaret from the Historical Society brought good news. "We got more support," she said, smiling. "A local sponsor wants to invest in Sweet Haven as a landmark. It's enough to cover the gap." Emily signed the papers with shaky hands, relief tangled with an emptiness she couldn't name. The building was hers. Ruth's dream was safe. But why did it feel like something was missing? James, meanwhile, spent nights in his apartment, the Savannah River reflecting city lights through vast windows. He ditched Carter Enterprises meetings, ignoring the board's calls. All he saw was Emily's face, the hurt he'd caused. One night, unable to bear it, he grabbed paper and wrote a letter, simple, honest words begging forgiveness, explaining he'd quit the company to prove she mattered more than profit. He mailed it, expecting nothing back. Weeks rolled by, and Sweet Haven thrived. Emily hired more help, added pecan pies that drew lines out the door. But one quiet night, wiping down the counter, she found his letter among the mail. Reading it, her heart stopped. "I love you," he'd written at the end, almost a whisper on the page. She dropped it, hands to her mouth, the world spinning. That same night, tired of waiting, James acted. He grabbed his keys and drove to the bakery, heart in his throat. Parking across the street, he saw the lights still on. Emily was there, alone, sweeping. He took a deep breath, crossed over, and knocked. She froze, eyes meeting his through the glass. "Emily," he said, voice muffled by the door, "I don't want any of this without you." He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple silver with a tiny stone gleaming in the streetlight. "Marry me." She stood still, broom in hand, heart pounding like it might burst. It was madness, impossible. But looking into his eyes, she saw something new. Truth. And then the door creaked open. But what would she say? The door creaked open, slicing the night silence like a tentative vow. Emily stood there, broom still clutched, eyes locked on James, as Savannah's cool air slipped through the gap. The ring in his hand glowed faintly under the street lamp, modest yet heavy with meaning she felt in her bones. "Marry me," he said again, voice soft, nearly a whisper, but brimming with a certainty that shook her. For a moment everything halted. The hum of distant cars, the cricket's song, even her own heartbeat seemed to pause. "You're crazy," she said at last, words quivering, lacking the strength she meant. Her eyes welled up and she hated it, hated how he could still unravel her after everything. "After all that's happened, you think you can show up with a ring and fix it?" "No," he replied, stepping closer, shrinking the space between them. "I don't think I can fix anything. But I think I can love you, and I want to try if you'll let me." Vulnerability cracked through his gaze, a breach in the armor he'd always worn, hitting her like a punch. He wasn't the icy Carter Enterprises man anymore. He was just James, standing there, offering what was left of him. Emily dropped the broom, its handle clattering to the floor, and crossed her arms, as if she could shield her racing heart. "I trusted you once, and you hurt me. How do I know it won't happen again?" Her voice broke, a tear tracing a warm path down her cheek. "You don't," he admitted, his eyes mirroring her sheen of tears. "But I do. I gave up everything, Emily. The company, the board, the Carter name. I don't want that anymore. I want this." He gestured at the bakery, at her, at the space that had bound them. "I want you." Silence settled, thick and charged. Emily felt the floor sway beneath her, Ruth's words whispering in her mind. Love's a recipe, darling. Sometimes you've got to risk burning to get it right. She glanced at the ring, his trembling hands, then his unwavering eyes. Against all reason, against every wall she'd built, she stepped forward. Yes, she whispered, so quiet it barely sounded. But James heard. His face lit up, and before she could say more, he pulled her into an embrace, arms wrapping her with a strength that spoke louder than words. The ring slid onto her finger, cool against her warm skin, and when he kissed her, the world spun back to life. Sweet, fierce, perfect. Months later, Sweet Haven shone brighter than ever. The walls glowed a vivid yellow, the sign restored with neat letters, and the smell of fresh bread mingled with laughter. Emily and James wed in a simple ceremony at Forsyth Park, under moss-draped oaks, with loyal bakery customers filling folding chairs. She wore a light cotton dress, he a tieless suit, and when they said, "I do," cheers rang through the trees, blending with birdsong. It was a day of warmth and promises, sealed with a peach cake she'd baked herself, the one that started it all. Life moved on, and one crisp fall morning, as Emily arranged pumpkin pies in the window, sudden nausea sent her running to the bathroom. Minutes later, holding a test with 2 pink lines, she laughed and cried, heart overflowing. James was upstairs, calmly reviewing orders, and when she raced up, his look shifted from confusion to shock in a heartbeat. "You're—" He didn't finish, but the grin splitting his face said it all. She nodded, and he lifted her off the ground, spinning her in the tiny office until they collapsed in giggles, dizzy with joy. "A baby," he murmured, hands framing her face, eyes alight with a purity she'd never seen so strong. Pregnancy brought tired days and whispered nights of names, dreams, and futures. When their daughter arrived, a girl with James's blue eyes and Emily's brown curls, they named her Ruth, honoring the grandmother who'd planted the seed. Little Ruthie entered the world on a spring morning, her strong cry bouncing through the upstairs room, laced with the scent of fresh muffins. Emily held her close, tears falling as James kissed her forehead, the three wrapped in a love that felt timeless. Years turned like pages in a well-loved book. Sweet Haven grew, not just a historical landmark, but a family's beating heart. Emily and James worked hand in hand, she kneading dough, he managing numbers and customer smiles. They weren't the lone baker and ex-millionaire anymore. They were partners, parents, a duo making every day a slice of heaven. The peach cake recipe returned to the display, handwritten on a board by the counter, and one golden summer afternoon, as Emily kneaded dough, 5-year-old Ruthie climbed onto a stool beside her. "Like this, Mommy?" she asked, chubby hands sinking into the dough, her childish voice brimming with wonder. Flour dusted her face, her eyes shining with the same grit Emily once saw in Ruth. "Just like that, sweetheart," Emily replied, voice thick, tears welling as she watched her daughter mimic the moves Ruth had taught her. James, wiping down the counter, paused and crossed over silently, enfolding them in a warm hug. He kissed Emily's forehead, then Ruthie's, and the heat of their family, forged through sweat, tears, and love, wrapped them like the scent of a cake fresh from the oven. Outside Sweet Haven, Savannah hummed its slow, charming tune. Tourists strolled through leafy squares, the river flowed peacefully under bridges, and life pulsed in every corner. But inside, time danced to a sweeter, fuller beat. Ruth's legacy lived not just in recipes or yellow walls, but in Ruthie's giggles, Emily's strength, James's redemption. It was a full circle, a tale that began with loss and ended in wholeness. One quiet night, locking up, Emily found an old photo of Ruth tucked in a recipe book. Ruth beamed in it, apron stained, eyes alive. Emily pressed it to her chest, a gentle smile on her lips, and whispered, "Thank you," into the stillness, feeling somehow that her grandmother was still there watching over them. James came up behind, wrapping her in his arms, and together they gazed out at Savannah's starry sky. "Ever think it all started with a cake?" he asked, voice light but laced with feeling. She laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "And ended with a family." They stood there, silence enfolding them, as Ruthie slept upstairs, dreaming of bread and sugar. Sweet Haven was secure, love was alive, and the future for once felt like a gift, sweet, warm, and perfect, like a recipe finally hitting its mark. So did you love the story? If you made it this far and got swept up in this journey of overcoming and love, drop the word cake in the comments. That way, I'll know you stuck with it to the end and adored it. I'll even send you a heart back. And don't leave the channel yet. The video popping up on your screen is just as moving as this one. I'm sure you'll love it. Check it out and let me know what you think.